So let's start with the next item on the agenda, which is the Regulatory Oversight Report for Uranium and Nuclear Substance Processing Facilities in Canada, 2016. This is outlined in Commission Member Document CMD 17 M45 and M45.A. A separate report will be presented later today on the uranium mines and mills facilities. The public was invited to comment in writing. The Commission received 4 submissions from the public. The report is separated into 2 components. The first part is the uranium processing facilities, and the second part is on the nuclear substance processing facilities. We'll start by opening the floor for questions after both industry sectors component made a presentation. We have representations here from industry, and we have some attending via video conferencing. And let's start by testing the technology. So I understand that we have Kamiko online. We can see you. Can you hear us?
It's Liam Mooney for the record, President Binder, and yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, we hear you very well. Thank you and welcome. So let me turn the floor now to Ms. Adi Tadros, who will make the opening remarks. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. And good morning, Mr. President and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Heidi Tadros. I am the Director General of the Directorate of Nuclear Cycle and Facilities Regulation. With me today are Ms. Kavita Murthy, Director of the Nuclear Processing Facilities, Michael Young, Sarah Eaton, and Renat Reshapov, who will be presenting different parts of this presentation. We are also joined by licensing and compliance staff, as well as subject matter experts with us today to help answer any questions the Commission may have. We are here to present Commission Member Document CMD 17 M45, titled Regulatory Oversight Report for Uranium and Nuclear Substance Processing Facilities in Canada, 2016. Our presentation today starts with a brief description of the Regulatory Oversight Report. Following that is an overview of the CNSC's risk-informed regulatory oversight activities listed on this slide. In line with the Regulatory Oversight Report, the presentation is then segmented by the uranium processing facilities and the nuclear substance processing facilities. Finally, we will cover some of the major themes identified in the interventions the CNSC has received. The CNSC currently produces a number of regulatory oversight reports as shown on this slide. The 2016 Regulatory Oversight Report for Uranium and Nuclear Substance Processing Facilities in Canada presents CNSC staff's assessment of the performance of operating uranium and nuclear substance processing facilities. This is the 5th annual Regulatory Oversight Report on uranium and nuclear substance processing facilities presented to the Commission. The public has been invited to comment and participate on these annual reports. The report covers the 2016 calendar year and includes a summary of the CNSC's regulatory efforts, overviews comparing performance across the uranium processing facilities in Canada and across the nuclear substance processing facilities in Canada. The report also includes site-specific sections which outline the licensee information on operation and major developments, CNSC staff's safety and control area performance rating, and detailed performance reporting on the 3 safety and control areas of radiation protection, environmental protection, and conventional health and safety. I will now turn the presentation over to Ms. Kavita Murthy, who will present an overview of the CNSC's regulatory oversight.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. My name is Kavita Murthy, and I'm the Director of Nuclear Processing Facilities Division. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission regulates Canada's uranium and nuclear processing facilities to protect the health, safety, and security of Canadians and the environment. The nature of this regulatory oversight is commensurate with the risk associated with the licensed site, the risk associated with the activity or program, and the performance of the licensee. The base level of risk is reflected in CNSC staff's facility-specific compliance plans, which include the number and scope of inspections. CNSC staff regularly review and revise these plans as required. The CNSC measures the licensee's performance by its ability to mitigate all risks posed by the licensed activity and in its ability to comply with the regulatory requirements. CNSC staff use safety and control areas, SCAs for short, to evaluate each licensee's performance. The 14 safety and control areas are shown on this slide. The relative importance of each safety and control area is related to the type of activity being regulated. CNSC staff continually assess licensees' performance in each safety and control area based on the results of regulatory oversight activities, and each safety and control area has an associated rating, which could be fully satisfactory, satisfactory, below expectations, or unacceptable. CNSC staff assign performance ratings based on the results of oversight activities for a given SCA. Each SCA comprises several specific areas that define its key components. An example of the radiation protection, safety, and control area is shown on this slide. CNSC staff considers set criteria such as key performance indicators, compliance with license conditions, as well as event reviews and follow-up, and assign a rating that best represents the licensee's performance in a holistic manner. A key performance indicator is licensee's adherence to regulatory limits and other limits defined in the license, which I'll cover in the next slide. Regulatory dose limits are set out in CNSE regulations and limit doses to workers and members of the public. Environmental release limits are established in a license to limit the quantity of nuclear and hazardous substances released into the environment as a result of that activity. Action levels are defined as a parameter that, if exceeded or reached, may indicate a loss of control on the part of a licensee's radiation protection program or environmental protection program, and it triggers a requirement for specific actions to be taken by the licensee. Action levels are designed to alert licensees before regulatory limits are reached. The CNSC requires that licensees set action levels based on operational performance or operational experience. And it requires that they use it requires that they use national and international guidance and best practices in setting the action limits. These levels are part of approved radiation and environmental protection programs for each licensee. In the next slide, we will provide a graphic representation of regulatory limits and action levels. This diagram illustrates the relationship between the regulatory limit, action level, and a monitored parameter. The regulatory limit is shown as a red line on this diagram. The region with the green dots represents the range of normal operations for that parameter. Licensees can have their own administrative levels within this range. Administrative levels are not shown on this slide, but they represent normal operating conditions and are useful for optimal working conditions. An action level, as shown on this slide with the orange line, indicates an exceedance of that parameter and requires a licensee to notify the CNSC, perform an immediate investigation, and where needed, carry out subsequent corrective actions and to take preventative measures. It is important to recognize that an exceedance of an action level does not imply a potential risk to the people or the environment, but it identifies that the operating parameter may be outside of norm based on facility design. The CNSC requires that licensees identify the parameters of their program that represent timely indicators of potential loss of control. For this reason, action levels are licensee specific and may change over time depending on operational conditions. To keep the public informed of regulatory activities occurring at uranium and nuclear substance processing facilities, CNSC staff regularly engage with the public, indigenous groups, and their leadership through attendance at community meetings, site tours, and technical information sessions. In addition to these outreach activities, CNSC staff also provide information through CNSC's website, social media, and CNSC Online. To complement existing and ongoing compliance activities, the CNSC implemented its independent environmental monitoring program to verify that the public and the environment around CNSC regulated sites are safe. This verification is achieved through independent sampling and analysis by CNSC staff of the air, water, soil, vegetation, and various foods around facilities. This slide shows where the CNSC conducted independent environmental monitoring in 2016 and also those planned for 2017 and 2018. Sampling for all the facilities identified in the 2017 column have been completed, and results will be posted on the CNSC's IEMP website. The results from the IEMP demonstrate that licensees' environmental protection programs are effective. I will now pass the presentation to Michael Young, who will provide CNSC staff's assessment of the performance of uranium processing facilities.
Thank you, Ms. Murthy. Good morning, Mr. President and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Michael Young, and I am a project officer in the Nuclear Processing Facilities Division. And I'm also the project coordinator for this regulatory oversight report. The nuclear fuel cycle begins with uranium being extracted from the ground and ends with its disposal following its use in the generation of energy. Uranium processing facilities are part of the nuclear fuel cycle, including refining, conversion, and fuel manufacturing. This slide shows the locations of the uranium processing facilities in Canada. Cameco's Blind River Refinery, Port Hope Conversion Facility, and Fuel Manufacturing Facility, as well as BWXT, Nuclear Energy Canada, Toronto and Peterborough. All the facilities are located in the province of Ontario. The license expiry dates and financial guarantee values for these facilities are also shown on the table on the slide. In 2016, CNSC staff spent 738 person days on licensing activities for the uranium processing facilities. These included the license renewal for the Port Hope Conversion Facility and the license transfer from GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy Canada Incorporated to BWXT Nuclear Energy Canada. 1,177 person days were dedicated to compliance activities for these facilities. This was accomplished through inspections and desktop reviews, which can be scheduled or unscheduled. CNSC staff performed 14 compliance inspections at these facilities in 2016. All enforcement actions arising from the findings were recorded and are tracked on the CNSC Regulatory Information Bank. To ensure consistency in event reporting, the CNSC issued a formal request under subsection 12.2 of the General Nuclear Safety and Control Regulations on February 25, 2016, requiring all uranium mines and mills and select Class 1A and 1B nuclear facilities to undertake a review of their reporting processes by March 31, 2016. All uranium processing facility licensees completed this request. This slide shows the 2016 performance ratings for each of the 14 safety and control areas. All of the uranium processing facilities received at least a satisfactory rating in all areas. The Blind River Refinery received a rating of fully satisfactory for conventional health and safety in recognition of 10 continuous years without a lost time injury. Overall, these ratings indicate adequate management of safety and control measures at all facilities. Next, we will look at performance and trends for specific safety and control areas. For the radiation protection safety and control area, this graph shows the average and maximum individual effective doses to nuclear energy workers in 2016 for all uranium processing facilities. The red line on the chart displays the 50 millisievert regulatory effective dose limit for nuclear energy workers. As shown, doses to workers at all uranium processing facilities were well below the limit in 2016. This slide provides a 5-year trend of doses to the public from each uranium processing facility from 2012 to 2016. Doses to the public from all uranium processing facilities continue to be well below the regulatory limit of 1 millisievert per year. This slide shows a 5-year trend for monitoring uranium in ambient air around uranium processing facilities from 2012 to 2016. The Ontario Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change standard for uranium in ambient air, shown as the green line on the slide, represents a concentration that is protective against adverse effects on health or the environment. The monitoring results, which represent the highest annual average from each facility's air monitoring stations, indicate that concentrations of uranium in ambient air around the uranium processing facilities were well below the ambient air standard for uranium. As noted on the slide, BWXT Peterborough does not conduct ambient air monitoring, as emissions at the point of release are already below the Ontario Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change air standard for uranium. This slide shows a 5-year trend for annual average uranium concentration in soil around uranium processing facilities from 2012 to 2016. Soil monitoring programs are intended to monitor the long-term effects of air emissions to show whether there is an accumulation of uranium in soil in the vicinity of a facility. The Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment, CCME, guideline of 23 micrograms uranium per gram for residential and parkland use is shown as the green line. The CCME soil quality guidelines were derived specifically for protection of the ecological receptors in the environment and/or for the protection of human health associated with an identified land use. In this case, residential/parkland use is the most conservative type of land use. Soil sampling results in 2016 continue to indicate that current uranium emissions from the uranium processing facilities are not resulting in levels observed in soils that would pose a risk to people or the environment. The number of lost time injuries and corrective actions taken in response is a key performance indicator for the conventional health and safety and control area. As shown on this slide, the number of lost time injuries in 2016 at the uranium processing facilities was low, although there was an increase at the Port Hope conversion facility. These are further described in the section of the presentation pertaining to that facility. In all cases, Cnse staff reviewed and accepted licensee corrective actions. This completes the overview of the uranium processing facilities. I would now like to pass the presentation to Sarah Eaton, who will continue the presentation with the facility-specific performance of the uranium processing facilities.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Eaton, and I'm a project officer and inspector in the Nuclear Processing Facilities Division. In the following slides, I will provide some specific highlights for each uranium processing facility for 2016. Cameco's Blind River Refinery is a Class 1B nuclear facility located in Blind River, Ontario. Its license is valid from March 1, 2012 to February 28, 2022. Cameco receives uranium concentrates from around the world. These concentrates are digested, purified, heated, concentrated, and thermally decomposed to produce a final product called uranium trioxide, or UO3. This product is transported to Cameco's Port Hope conversion facility for further processing. There were no changes to the facility or its license condition handbook in 2016. During the summer, the plant was shut down for regularly planned maintenance. The facility licensing basis was maintained. The Mississauga First Nations are the closest community to the Blind River Refinery, located approximately 1 kilometer away. Since 2014, CNSC staff and the Mississauga First Nations have held regular meetings to discuss activities at Cameco's Blind River Refinery. Both parties met in February 2016 to discuss the Mississauga First Nations Air Quality Sampling Program. In July, both parties met again to develop an IEMP sampling plan on Mississauga First Nation lands. The IEMP was conducted in October of 2017 and included the sampling plan developed with the Mississauga First Nations. The results from the sampling will be posted on the CNSC's website. The next campaign is scheduled for 2019. In 2016, there were no regulatory limits or action levels exceeded. There were 3 lost time injuries in 2016, as shown on the slide. There were no lost time injuries in 2016, as shown in the slide. CNSC staff were As presented in the Regulatory Oversight Report, CNSC staff are satisfied that at the Blind River Refinery in 2016, Cameco implemented effective programs to protect the health and safety of workers, the public, and the environment. Let's move on to Cameco's Port Hope conversion facility. Cameco's Port Hope conversion facility is a Class 1B nuclear facility located in Port Hope, Ontario. Cameco's license is valid from March 1, 2017 to February 28, 2027. Cameco receives uranium trioxide, or UO3, from the Blind River Refinery and converts it to uranium dioxide, UO2, and uranium hexafluoride, UF6. UO2 is used in the fabrication of fuel pellets for CANDU reactors. UF6 is shipped to countries around the world for further processing. In 2016, there were no changes to the facility operation or license condition handbook. The UO2 and UF6 plants had planned maintenance summer shutdowns. The facility was maintained according to the licensing basis. The Commission held a hearing in Port Hope in November of 2016 to consider Cameco's license renewal application. As part of the public hearing, the Commission received information from Cameco, CNSC staff, and 44 interventions. The Commission reviewed all the information and announced its decision to renew the Port Hope Conversion Facility operating license for a period of 10 years in February 2017. Vision in Motion, or VIM, is Cameco's project to clean up and renew the Port Hope Conversion Facility. The project is being carried out under Cameco's operating license for the facility. In 2016, Cameco carried out cleanup and remediation work to further progress the planning and design development for Vision in Motion. Cameco also completed the demolition of Building 42 on the center pier, which was no longer in use. It is anticipated that most aspects of Vision in Motion, particularly building demolition, soil remediation, groundwater treatment program expansion, and transfer of wastes will occur over a 4 to 5 year period after the Port Hope Area Long-Term Waste Management Facility is open for the receipt of wastes. In 2016, there were no regulatory limits or action levels exceeded. There were 3 time loss injuries in 2016, as shown on the slide. CNSC staff reviewed and accepted Cameco's corrective actions. The next 2 slides will provide an update to the Commission on items stemming from the 2016 license renewal hearing. In March 2017, Cameco implemented a monthly average release limit of 275 micrograms per liter for uranium discharges from the sanitary sewer. The Commission also requested that CNSC staff report on Cameco's making contaminant of concern data publicly available. This action is expected to be completed by the end of 2017, when Cameco fully implements a number of Canadian Standards Association group standards. CNSC staff will provide an update to the Commission in the next regulatory oversight report, which will be presented in 2018. In September 2017, CNSC staff completed a review of Cameco's self-assessment of fish impingement and entrainment studies. CNSC staff conclude that a Fisheries Act authorization for serious harm to fish is not required. CNSC staff conclude that both the intake screen at the Port Hope conversion facility and the reduced intake velocity work to effectively reduce fish impingement when screening panels are installed and maintained properly. Fisheries and Oceans Canada agree with CNSC staff's assessment. The CNSC took regulatory action and issued an administrative monetary penalty to Cameco in 2017 for an event that occurred earlier in 2017. This does not change CNSC staff's findings for 2016. As this matter is under review and will be before the Commission in March 2018, we will not comment further in this presentation. As outlined in the Regulatory Oversight Report, CNSC staff are satisfied that, at the Port Hope conversion facility in 2016, Cameco implemented effective programs to protect the health and safety of workers, the public, and the environment. I'll now discuss Cameco's fuel manufacturing. Cameco's fuel manufacturing, or CFM, is a Class 1B nuclear facility located in Port Hope, Ontario. Cameco's license is valid from March 1st, 2012 to February 28, 2022. Cameco receives UO2 powder from the Port Hope conversion facility and fabricates fuel bundles for CANDU reactors. In 2016, there were no changes to facility operations or its license condition handbook. Cameco had regularly scheduled summer maintenance shutdowns, and the licensing basis for the facility was maintained. In 2016, there were no regulatory limits exceeded and no lost time injuries. One environmental action level was exceeded, which is described in the following slide. An action level exceedance occurred during the third quarter of 2016 in the stack servicing the new automated grinder. The measured value was 9.52 micrograms of uranium per cubic meter compared to the daily action level of 2 micrograms of uranium per cubic meter. This is a good example of where an action level worked as intended. The action level exceedance required Cameco to perform an immediate investigation. In doing so, Cameco determined that a filter was incorrectly installed. The filter was correctly installed, and the subsequent samples were below the daily action level. CNSC staff are satisfied with Cameco's investigation and corrective actions. Ambient air monitoring conducted around the facility confirms that uranium concentrations remain far below levels associated with potential risk to the public. CNSC, as presented in the Regulatory Oversight Report, CNSC staff are satisfied that at chemical fuel manufacturing in 2016, Cameco implemented effective programs to protect the health and safety of workers, the public, and the environment. The next slides will discuss BWXT Nuclear Energy Canada. BWXT Nuclear Energy Canada, or BWXT, operates two facilities, one in Toronto and one in Peterborough, under a single Class 1B nuclear facility license. BWXT's license is valid from January 1st, 2011 to December 31st, 2020. BWXT's license authorizes it to produce natural UO2 pellets in Toronto and produce and test fuel bundles in Peterborough. The Peterborough facility is also authorized to receive, repair, modify, and return contaminated equipment from off-site nuclear facilities. BWXT Canada completed its acquisition of GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy Canada in 2016. The Commission approved the transfer of the operating license to BWXT following an application in August of 2016. No significant changes to the operations, management, and personnel occurred at either facility as a result of this acquisition. As part of the license transfer, the Commission also approved a new financial guarantee for the facility. The financial guarantee did not change the previous financial guarantee for GE Hitachi. In 2016, there were no regulatory limit exceedences and no lost time injuries at BWXT. One radiation protection action level was exceeded, which is described in the following slide. There was one action level exceedance at BWXT Toronto. One employee's urinalysis result of 13 micrograms per liter exceeded the 10 micrograms per liter weekly action level. BWXT conducted an investigation and determined that the cause was most likely a contaminated sample, but could not completely rule out an exposure. As a result, the committed effective dose to the worker was calculated to be approximately 0.2 millisieverts. There are no health effects associated with this level of exposure. CNSC staff were satisfied with the actions taken by BWXT to address this action level exceedance. As presented in the Regulatory Oversight Report, CNSC staff are satisfied that in 2016, BWXT implemented effective programs to protect the health and safety of workers, the public, and the environment. I will now turn the presentation to Rinat Rashapov, who will discuss the performance of the nuclear substance processing facilities.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. My name is Rinat Rashapov, and I'm a project officer in the Nuclear Processing Facilities Division. Nuclear substance processing facilities are different from the uranium processing facilities, as their end products are not related to the nuclear fuel cycle for power reactors. The products created by nuclear substance processing facilities have a variety of end uses, such as diagnosing and treating cancer, sterilizing items for sanitary reasons such as surgical gloves, and creating self-luminous emergency and exit signs for buildings and airplanes. There are 3 nuclear substance processing facilities in Canada, all of which are located in the province of Ontario. SRB Technologies is a gaseous tritium light source manufacturing facility located in Pembroke. Nori is a health sciences organization that provides products used in the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of disease. Best Electronics manufactures teletherapy machines, self-sheeted irradiators, and small cyclotrons. Both Nori and Best Electronics are located in Ottawa. The license expiry dates and financial guarantee amounts for these facilities are shown on the table in this slide. CNSC staff spent a total of 23 person days on licensing activities for the nuclear substance processing facilities in 2016. A total of 384 person days were dedicated to compliance activities, including inspections and desktop reviews. CNSC staff performed a total of 8 compliance inspections at these facilities. All enforcement actions were recorded and are tracked in the CNSC Regulatory Information Bank. Nuclear substance processing facilities licensees also received the formal request from the CNSC under subsection 12.2 of the General Nuclear Safety and Control Regulations, requiring them to undertake a review of their reporting processes by March 31st, 2016. All of the licensees completed their request. For 2016, all of the nuclear substance processing facilities met CNSC requirements and received a satisfactory rating, with the exception of a few SCAs that were fully satisfactory for exceeding CNSC expectations. SRBT's conventional health and safety program was rated fully satisfactory in 2016 as a result of its consistent record of worker protection. CNSC staff also rated SRBT's Fitness for Service program as fully satisfactory as a result of several improvements to its manufacturing processes, equipment, and revision of its maintenance program in 2016. These improvements proactively incorporated best practices. Nori received a rating of fully satisfactory for environmental protection due to its continual low environmental releases and the licensee's commitment to the ALARA principle. Norion's security program was also rated fully satisfactory due to its continual improvement and ability to effectively maintain the program. Overall, these ratings indicate adequate management of safety and control measures at all facilities. The graph on this slide shows the 2016 average and maximum effective radiation doses to nuclear energy workers for these three facilities. The red line represents the regulatory annual effective dose limit of 50 millisieverts for a nuclear energy worker. As illustrated, the average and maximum dose received by a worker at each of the facilities was well below the regulatory limit. This data demonstrates that doses to workers at nuclear substance processing facilities are safe and that the licensee's radiation protection programs remain effective. This slide provides the dose to public from each nuclear substance processing facility from 2012 to 2016. Doses to the public from all nuclear substance processing facilities continue to be well below the regulatory limit of 1 millisievert per year. Note that public dose estimates are not provided for Best Terratronics because its licensed activities involve sealed sources and there are no discharges to the environment at this facility. This slide outlines the trend of lost time injuries within the past 5 years. As shown in the table, the number of lost time injuries at the nuclear substance processing facilities in 2016 was still low, but have increased compared to 2015. CNSC staff continue to review corrective actions taken by licensees to ensure that injuries are prevented. Now we will look at the three nuclear substance processing facilities in more detail, starting with SRB Technologies. The SRBT facility is located in Pembroke, Ontario. SRBT processes tritium gas to produce gaseous tritium light sources and also manufactures products that contain these sources. SRBT's license is valid from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2022. This slide illustrates some of the items that are manufactured at SRBT, including exit signs, aircraft signs, safety markers, and raw light sources. In 2016, there were no significant process modifications to SRBT's facility. There were no changes to the license conditions handbook, and the facility was maintained according to the licensing basis. In its decision to renew SRBT's license, the Commission requested that CNSC staff present annually on the total quantity of tritium processed at the SRBT facility, including the number of products shipped and the number of expired signs received for reuse or disposal, and provide annual information on tritium concentrations in groundwater. In 2016, SRBT processed a total of approximately 28.1 million gigabecquerels of tritium. There were 1,001 outgoing shipments of products that contained gaseous tritium light sources and roughly 30,000 expired signs shipped to SRBT in 2016. The majority of returned devices are packaged, secured, and transferred to a licensed waste management facility at Chalk River Laboratories, while a small number are reused in other applications. In 2016, a total of approximately 6.7 million gigabecquerels of tritium activity from expired gaseous tritium light sources were transferred as low-level waste material, which represents an increase of nearly 2.4 million gigabecquerels compared to 2015. This figure provides the 2016 average groundwater monitoring data near the SRBT facility. As indicated by the yellow text boxes, the highest tritium levels in groundwater occur adjacent to the facility. Concentrations near residential areas and the Muskrat River are very low, as shown by the green boxes. The concentration pattern observed in this slide is reflective of aerial deposition rather than groundwater migration. As it rains, the tritium in the air is transferred into the groundwater and decays before it is able to travel very far. This means that values in the Muskrat River are expected to decrease from what is observed today. Tritium values in wells located in the residential area have reduced below 200 becquerels per liter, which is well below the provincial drinking water standard of 7,000 becquerels per liter. These residences are connected to the municipal water supply, which is fed from the Ottawa River, where tritium is near the detectable limit of 5 becquerels per liter. CNSC staff conclude that residents in the area and the Muskrat River remain protected. On the next slide, we will look at the trend for the monitoring well MW0610, which is located on the SRBT premises next to the main stack. This graph shows the average measured concentrations of tritium in groundwater since 2006 for the monitoring well located under the stacks and compares it to the predicted concentrations from CNSC staff's groundwater model. This shows that the observed concentration pattern is consistent with predicted values from CNSC staff's groundwater modeling. A good accordance between both curves can be observed, and although measured concentrations slightly increased from 2013 to 2015, tritium levels have continued to decrease since 2015. In 2016, SRBT had no regulatory limit or action level exceedences, and no lost time injuries occurred. CNSC staff are satisfied that SRBT has adequately controlled radiation exposures and environmental releases and continues to implement a highly effective health and safety program in addition to a maintenance program. SRBT continues to protect the health and safety of workers and the environment. This concludes the section on SRBT. I will now move on to Nori. Nori Canada Incorporated is a nuclear substance processing facility located in Ottawa, Ontario. Nori manufactures sealed radiation sources used in cancer therapy and irradiation technologies, and a variety of medical isotopes used in nuclear medicine. The satellite photo on the right-hand side on this slide shows both the Nori and Best Terratronics facilities, as they are directly adjacent to one another. Norion's facility is highlighted in the red box. Norion's license is valid from November 1st, 2015 to October 31st, 2025. Norion manufactures sealed radiation sources for medical and industrial applications and processes unsealed radioisotopes for health and life sciences applications. Effective October 31st, 2016, Norion made the business decision to cease production and sale of iodine-125, iodine-131, and xenon-133. There was no impact to Norion's environment, health, and safety programs as a result of this change. There were no changes to the license conditions handbook in 2016, and Norion maintained the facility according to the licensing basis. In 2016, Norion had no regulatory limit or action level exceedences. There were 3 lost time injuries in 2016, and Cnse staff reviewed and accepted Norion's corrective actions. Cnse staff are satisfied that Norion continues to protect the health and safety of workers and the environment. Cnse staff are satisfied that Norion has adequately controlled radiation exposures and protects its workers. Norion has implemented an environmental protection program and security program that both exceed Cnse requirements. Norion continues to protect the health and safety of workers, the public, and the environment. This concludes the section on Norion. I will now move to Best Electronics Limited. Best Electronics Limited is a nuclear substance processing facility that is also located in Ottawa, Ontario, directly adjacent to the Norion facility. The photo on this slide is the same one that was presented for Norion. However, now the Best Electronics facility is highlighted in the red box. Best Electronics license is valid from July 1st, 2014 to June 30th, 2019. In 2016, Best Electronics maintained the facility according to the licensing basis, and there were no changes to the license conditions handbook. This slide provides an update to the Commission regarding the status of Best Electronics financial guarantee. On August 24th, 2015, a CNSC designated officer issued an order to Best Electronics following a failure to comply with the financial guarantee license condition that required the provision of an acceptable financial guarantee by July 31st, 2015. Best Electronics reduced its inventory of nuclear substances and subsequently submitted a revised preliminary decommissioning plan, including a revised decommissioning cost estimate of $1.8 million. The Commission accepted the financial guarantee on July 14, 2017. The order has since been closed by the Commission, and Best Electronics is in compliance with its financial guarantee license condition. In 2016, Best Electronics experienced no regulatory limit or action level exceedences. Due to the nature of its activities, there are no environmental action levels for Best Electronics facility. There were 3 lost time injuries in 2016. Cnse staff reviewed and accepted Best Electronics corrective actions. Cnse staff are satisfied that Best Electronics has adequate measures to protect the health and safety of workers, public, and the environment. This concludes the section on Best Electronics. I will now move the presentation back to Kavita Murthy.
Thank you. Before we conclude, we are going to present an overview of the CNSC's participant funding program and interventions received regarding the regulatory oversight report. The CNSC offered participant funding to assist members of the public, indigenous groups, and other stakeholders in reviewing CNSC staff's regulatory oversight report by providing new, distinctive, and valuable information through informed and topic-specific written submissions to the Commission. In total, participant funding reimbursement of up to $32,055 in funds was approved for 3 applicants. The CNSC received 5 written interventions for the regulatory oversight report. The 3 participant funding program recipients, Swim, Drink, Fish Canada, and Lake Ontario Waterkeeper, Northwatch and Algonquins of Ontario, and the Canadian Nuclear Workers Council and BWXT Nuclear Energy Canada are the interventions that we have received. CNSC staff have reviewed all of the interventions. Several of the comments are related to topics that were discussed during the license renewal hearing for the Port Hope Conversion Facility and generally during the proceedings in November 2016. And they relate to matters that are beyond the scope of the licensee's performance review, which is the subject of this meeting. A detailed disposition of comments received is provided in Annex A attached to the presentation. However, some of the key themes identified in the interventions are listed on this slide, and we will address them in the next few slides. One comment received from Northwatch was regarding the availability of reference documents. The CNSC responded to an initial request from Northwatch and provided the licenses and the license condition handbooks for all of the facilities included in this regulatory oversight report. Northwatch responded with a second, more extensive request for documents related to the licensee programs referenced in the license condition handbooks, primarily their waste management and decommissioning programs. Staff directed Northwatch to contact licensees directly to obtain these documents. As the regulatory oversight report pertains to licensee performance in 2016 calendar year, it is CNSC staff's opinion that the request for additional documents was beyond the scope of an annual review. We further note that all of the licensees discussed in this regulatory oversight report post their annual compliance reports on their public websites. These reports include detailed information on environmental monitoring and waste management activities. One principal recommendation from Northwatch is that waste management safety and control area should be reported on in future regulatory oversight reports. It is CNSC staff's position that the 3 SCAs of radiation protection, environmental protection, and conventional health and safety are a good representation of licensee performance in other SCAs. CNSC's regulatory oversight, however, extends to all 14 safety and control areas, including waste management. Regardless of the 3 SCAs reported on detail in this regulatory oversight report, any noteworthy changes, such as improvements or deteriorations of licensee performance in any of the other SCAs, would be reported in regulatory oversight reports. Further, licensees annually report on their safety performance in all safety and control areas, and as noted before, these reports are available on their public websites. Finally, with regards to waste management, we wish to note that Canada is a contracting party to the IAEA's Joint Convention on the Safety of Spent Fuel Management and on the Safety of Radioactive Waste Management. Every 3 years, the CNSC, on behalf of Canada, tables a national report on waste management practices and activities in Canada. This comprehensive report is peer-reviewed by international counterparts in waste management, and Canada's national report, the accompanying presentation, and responses to questions raised by international peer reviewers are available on the CNSC's public website. The latest report was tabled on October 23, 2017, and an executive summary is already posted on the CNSC's public website. The full report will be posted pending translation. Interveners have noted that for all of the facilities included in this regulatory oversight report, environmental releases are very low. They have therefore recommended that the release limits in the license be lowered to match the actual releases. Release limits are set at levels that are protective of the public and the environment and are indicative of the facility's safe operating envelope based upon its design and its operations. The CNSC's regulatory framework ensures that licensees have programs in place to protect the public and the environment and workers. Similar to dose limits to workers, which are far higher than the actual doses received to workers, but are nevertheless safe, release limits determine the outer bound of the facility operations while ensuring that public and environment remain safe. Licensees are also required to establish action levels and monitor environmental releases much more closely so that they can identify and intervene when there is a deviation from the normal operating conditions and take corrective actions as needed and immediately. Underneath the action level, there are licensees' administrative levels, which are even more sensitive indicators of potential issues with operations. CNSC staff do recognize the need for increased clarity and standardization in the methodology used to establish release limits at CNSC licensed facilities. To that end, CNSC staff are currently drafting a regulatory document which will go through the normal process of document development and approval. Lake Ontario Waterkeeper has made several recommendations for the standardization and expansion of monitoring of liquid discharges from uranium processing facilities in general and PHCF in particular throughout their intervention. CNSC staff note that the effluent monitoring programs that the facilities have in place are risk-informed, graded, and effective in controlling releases from these facilities. In the coming year, with the implementation of the guidance from CSA standards on effluent and environmental monitoring, we expect that there will be further standardization in environmental monitoring practices. The draft CNSC regulatory document 3.1.2, which staff will present to the Commission tomorrow for approval, if approved and once implemented, will ensure standardization of reporting environmental and other performance data to the CNSC. Finally, with regards to PHCF, as noted in the consultant report by Mr. Wilf Ruland, which is attached to Lake Ontario Waterkeeper's intervention, it is the CNSC's expectation that the Vision in Motion project that PHCF is going to undertake will result in site-wide, broad scope improvement to water management at the Port Hope conversion facility. In their intervention, the Algonquins of Ontario have recommended improvements in or enhancements to CNSC and licensee engagement and outreach activities with their Indigenous communities. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission recognizes the value of community knowledge and Indigenous traditional knowledge and understands the importance of consulting and building relationships with Canada's Aboriginal peoples. To this end, CNSC staff will continue to explore opportunities to provide objective, scientific information in a user-friendly manner on the activities that it regulates, and continue to meet with the Algonquins of Ontario to discuss their issues and concerns. Further, it is CNSC staff's expectation that licensees will develop their public information program in line with the interest and information needs of their stakeholder community, which will include Indigenous communities that have an interest in their operations. Interveners also provided several recommendations for improvements to the regulatory oversight reports. Based on this input from the interveners, the regulatory oversight for 2017 next year will have a separate summary table as an appendix to all events reported by to the CNSC with explanatory notes as appropriate. Where feasible, we will provide the maximum and average values of monitored parameters and provide additional information on public information and outreach activities that licensees have undertaken. There are a number of other suggestions that we are in the process of evaluating at this time, and we wish to thank all the interveners for their recommendations. I will now return the presentation to Ms. Heidi Tadros.
Thank you, Heidi Tadros. For the record, these last two slides will summarize CNSC staff's conclusion on the licensee's performance for uranium and nuclear substance processing. So in conclusion, CNSC staff compliance activities during 2016 have confirmed that uranium and nuclear substance processing facilities across all 14 safety and control areas were rated satisfactory or better, that radiation protection programs adequately controlled radiation exposures, keeping doses as low as reasonably achievable. We also conclude that environmental protection programs were effective in 2016 in protecting the environment, and that conventional health and safety programs continue to protect workers. And finally, CNSC staff conclude that all other programs in support of the remaining safety and control areas required to ensure the protection of the health and safety of workers, the public, and the environment continue to be effectively implemented. CNSC staff therefore conclude that in 2016, each facility operated safely and met performance expectations with respect to the health and safety of workers, for the protection of the environment, and to Canada's international obligation. This concludes CNSC staff's presentation. Thank you for your attention. We are available to take any questions you may have.
Thank you.